While they toasted to my sister with champagne, I cried alone in the guest room, and none of them noticed. A week later, at the will reading, someone finally said my name. The music echoed through the walls while I sat on the edge of the guest bed, mascara bleeding into the seams of a pillow that wasn't mine. Downstairs, they were raising glasses. To Ruby. Always Ruby. 30, fabulous, adored. I wasn't even an afterthought. Uncle Desmond had died 3 days earlier. No one said his name once during the party. Not even a moment of silence. Just streamers, catered sushi, and endless applause for a sister who never had to ask to be celebrated. I had asked Patricia, gently, if we could postpone the party. Ruby needs this, she snapped, not even looking up from the centerpiece order form. He was old. Don't make it about you. It was always that, a warning, a deflection. Don't make it about me. So I smiled through dinner, posed for photos no one wanted me in, and poured drinks like a waitress instead of a daughter. They handed me their phones for pictures, called it helping. But no one noticed I hadn't eaten. Or that I was shaking. When the first candle was lit, I slipped upstairs. Quietly. I didn't want to ruin it, God forbid. I just couldn't breathe. My chest felt like it was sinking inwards. So I closed the door, collapsed on the bed, and cried into the sleeve of a blouse I bought with my own money. They laughed downstairs like nothing was wrong. No one came up. Not once. I checked my phone for a message. Nothing. But in my inbox sat one unread email, a notice from Desmond's lawyer. Will reading, Tuesday, 2 p.m. Presence required, Ivy Brooks. I stared at it. Desmond was always quiet, but he noticed things. He used to send me cards with tiny notes, don't let them shrink you, or, you shine differently, that's not a flaw. I saved them all. They were proof someone saw me. Later that night, I came back downstairs. The cake had been cut. Ruby was opening gifts. Patricia turned to me, frowned, and said, at least clean yourself up before you ruin the photos. No one asked where I'd been. In that moment, it clicked. I wasn't just forgotten. I was disposable. A shadow that made them uncomfortable whenever it got too close to the spotlight. But maybe, just maybe, Desmond had left one final light switch on for me, and in 1 week, the room would finally go silent, and they'd have no choice but to hear my name. Growing up, I always knew where I stood, and it wasn't in the family photo frame. Ruby was the star. The dancer, the pretty one, the one who lit up the room. I was the quiet sister, the helper, the extra chair pulled into a group photo. No one remembered to print. Patricia used to say I was too sensitive, as if my tears came from nowhere. But I cried because I noticed everything. The way they leaned in when Ruby spoke, the way they looked bored when I did. The way my wins were expected, and hers were celebrated. When Ruby got straight B's, it was, she's creative, grades don't define her. When I got straight A's, it was, of course you did. You're that type. My excellence was invisible because it wasn't entertaining. My effort was never sparkly enough. Birthdays made it worse. Ruby's were massive events. Rented halls, ice cream bars, a DJ by the time she was 16. Mine were small dinners. Sometimes just takeout. One year they forgot completely. Patricia said, it's just a date. Don't be dramatic. Russell never said much. He was the kind of father who nodded instead of hugging, who preferred talking about bills to asking about feelings. He showed up to Ruby's plays with flowers. For mine, he was busy at work. Always, Ruby liked being the center. She thrived on it. But she also liked making sure I stayed on the outside. Once, when I won a writing contest, she told everyone I had copied the idea from a book. They believed her. I never entered again. When I got my scholarship letter for college, I showed it to them with shaking hands. Patricia looked at the amount and said, well, that'll help us avoid student loans. Ruby, who hadn't applied anywhere yet, got a celebratory dinner, just to encourage her. I stopped telling them things. I worked 2 jobs through school, sent myself care packages, took buses home alone on holidays. They'd greet me with distracted hugs and ask how Ruby was doing. I wasn't the daughter who sparked their attention. I was the one who filled the silence. Desmond was the only adult who asked real questions. Are you eating enough? Are you sleeping? He never made grand gestures, just paid attention. I didn't see him often, but I remember every single conversation. Because he made me feel like I existed, and now he was gone. And my family was too busy uploading birthday photos to notice that the only person who ever made space for me had left behind a letter, and my name was in it. The first time I realized I wasn't wanted, I was 8. Ruby had just started gymnastics and everyone was at her meet. I had a fever, but Patricia said, you'll be fine. She left me alone on the couch with crackers and a note that said, don't open the door for strangers. They came home hours later with medals, takeout, and stories. No one asked how I was feeling. No one noticed the empty water glass on the floor. I had thrown up twice. Ruby got to sleep in their bed that night, just for being a star. Every parent-teacher night, my teachers said I was quiet, thoughtful, gifted. Patricia's response was always, yeah, she's always been low maintenance. Ruby's teachers said she was spirited even when she had detention. They smiled like it was a compliment. When I got my first period, I was terrified. I told Patricia and she sighed, tossed me a pad, and said, welcome to womanhood. Ruby got a brunch, a necklace, and a mother-daughter spa day when it happened to her a year later. I learned not to ask for help. When I twisted my ankle during PE, Patricia said, you're always so dramatic. When Ruby stubbed her toe, she got crutches, just in case. I sat through 2 weeks of pain with a smile because I knew pain didn't earn anything in that. House.at Christmas, Ruby's gifts were wrapped in glittery paper with handwritten tags. Mine were usually practical, a new set of pens, a basic sweater, sometimes nothing at all. One year, my gift was labeled, from the family. Ruby's had names, Love, Mom and Dad. I got into a car accident my second year of college. Minor, but scary. I called home, no answer. When I told Patricia the next day, she said, you're okay, right? So what's the problem? When Ruby got a flat tire, they drove 4 hours. To rescue her. I once tried to talk about it. Quietly, carefully. Do you ever feel like you love her more than me? Patricia stared at me, cold and controlled. Don't be jealous, Ivy. It's not a good look. Russell didn't say a word. Just turned the TV volume up. Ruby used to joke that I was the secret sibling. She said it in front of people. Ivy's like our family's hidden chapter. The one nobody talks about. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But inside, something kept breaking every time. By the time I was 26, I had accepted it. I wasn't the daughter they posted about, bragged about, or even remembered to call on. Hard days. I was background. But Desmond never treated me like background. And maybe that's why what he left behind would change everything. The morning of the will reading, Patricia barely remembered. Oh, that's today, she said while pouring coffee. Ruby was too busy choosing outfits for a brunch she had after. I stood there holding my keys, heart racing. No one even asked if I wanted company. At the lawyer's office, I sat alone in the waiting room. I recognized Desmond's handwriting on the folders. It made my chest ache. The receptionist smiled kindly. Are your parents joining? I shook my head. They had other plans. Just before the meeting started, Patricia and Ruby walked in, sunglasses, loud perfume, laughter. We were close by, Patricia said, adjusting her coat. Might as well stop in. I sat in silence while Ruby greeted the lawyer like she was at a red carpet event. The lawyer, Mr. Langford, was calm but precise. He listed Desmond's assets, charities, debts. Then he opened a separate envelope. There's a personal letter, he said, and a specific clause. My name was printed on the front. Ivy Brooks. In capital letters. Ruby leaned in, probably expecting a side note or a small gift. Mr. Langford read aloud, to Ivy, the only one in this family who never asked me for anything, and the only one who ever listened, I leave my house, savings, and publishing royalties. The silence was instant. Patricia shifted. Ruby scoffed. Is this some kind of joke, she said. The lawyer cleared his throat. All legal. Witnessed. Finalized 2 months before his death. Ruby looked at me like I had stolen something. I felt the heat rise in my face. I hadn't known what to expect, but not this. I didn't even know he had royalties. I don't understand, Patricia whispered. Why not the family? Mr. Langford raised an eyebrow. He was very clear. Ivy was his family. The room was heavy. Ruby stood up. Well, I hope you enjoy your little cottage inheritance. Patricia didn't speak to me. She walked out like I had betrayed her. I sat there, stunned, holding a folder with my name, finally, undeniably, in ink. I didn't feel victorious. I felt cracked open. Because this wasn't about money. It was about someone finally saying, I see you. You mattered to me. In front of the people who always made sure I didn't, and for once, they couldn't ignore it. Because this time, the silence was broken, and it wasn't mine. I drove straight to my apartment and didn't get out of the car. I just sat there, fingers wrapped around the steering wheel, Desmond's folder on the passenger seat like it weighed 50 pounds. My heart was racing, but I wasn't sure if it was grief or guilt, or both. Inside, I placed the folder on the table and stared at it. I didn't open it again. I couldn't. My mind kept echoing Ruby's voice, your little cottage inheritance. Even in that moment, even with legal proof of my worth, she made it sound small. The weight of it hit later that night. I sat on the kitchen floor, back against the fridge, and sobbed. The kind of sob that comes from decades of being ignored, erased, edited out of every narrative. Desmond had seen me, and now he was gone. I cried for the birthdays forgotten, the photos cropped, the words unsaid. For the moments I had celebrated alone, clapping quietly for myself because no one else had ever bothered to. And now, the one person who did had left me something I couldn't even share with joy. Patricia didn't call. Ruby didn't text. But the silence felt different now, not cold, but clarifying. I wasn't waiting for them anymore. I was just existing in a world where I finally had a name on paper. A place. A legacy, however quiet. I tried calling Rachel, a coworker who had become a friend, but hung up before the second ring. I didn't want comfort. I wanted time. I needed to sit in this, not rush past it. Because this wasn't just Desmond's death. It was the death of who I had been trying to be. I slept on the couch that night, Desmond's letter still unopened beside me. I couldn't bring myself to read his words yet. I was scared they'd break me further, or worse, that they'd be too kind, and I wouldn't know how to receive it. The next day, I stayed home from work. Called in with a vague excuse. I cleaned the entire apartment top to bottom, not because it was dirty, but because I needed to control something. Scrubbing the corners they never saw, just like I used to. By the third day, the silence began to feel like space. Not emptiness, space. A place where I could breathe without being interrupted, judged, or told I was too sensitive. It was the first time in years I didn't feel like I was apologizing just for existing, and maybe, I thought, as I finally picked up the letter and opened the flap, this space, this silence, could finally be mine. The letter wasn't long. Just 3 paragraphs, handwritten in blue ink. But every word felt like it had been chosen with care. Ivy, it began, I know you don't like surprises, but this one is necessary. I need you to know that someone saw you. Always. He wrote about visiting when I was little, watching me quietly take care of everyone. You had a kind of dignity most adults never learn, he said. Even when they ignored you, you carried yourself with grace. I cried before I reached the second page. Desmond explained the royalties, a series of small children's books he had published under a pseudonym. Nothing famous, but enough to sustain someone for years. You were the reason I wrote them, he said. Your stories. Your silence. Your strength. I went online and found them. The main character's name was Ivy. A quiet girl who solved problems by listening, observing, and protecting the small creatures no one else noticed. I had never seen them before. He had never told me. I found an old photo of us, me at 10. Sitting in his kitchen, drawing. He was reading beside me, not interrupting, just present. That was his way. And now, even in death, he was showing up for me in a way my parents never had. I contacted Mr. Langford to confirm everything. He was warm, gentle. Desmond was very intentional, he said. He revised his will 3 times over the years. The final version, the one with your name, was written just after your college graduation. I asked if he ever mentioned why. Langford paused. He said you were the only one who never treated his presence as optional. That when he spoke, you listened. That when you spoke, you didn't expect anything in return. He admired that deeply. I walked through the house Desmond left me later that week. Small, quiet, full of books and postcards. Everything in it felt familiar, not because I had been there often, but because the energy was the same, calm, thoughtful, present. On the desk was one last envelope. Inside, a sticky note with my name and one sentence: use this place to be exactly who you are, loudly or quietly. I held it to my chest and closed my eyes. For the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere, and that belonging didn't come from proving anything, it came from finally being seen by someone who had no reason to pretend. 2 weeks after moving into Desmond's house, I hosted a small book reading for his children's series. Local kids came. A librarian I knew helped organize it. I didn't invite Patricia or Ruby. I didn't think they'd come. But the photos made it to Facebook. Ruby commented, "Wow. Didn't know you were into literacy events." No heart emoji. No question. Just passive curiosity dressed in sarcasm. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She was watching. And that was enough. Later that week, Patricia called. For the first time in months. Your father and I were wondering if you're still upset. I almost laughed. Upset. As if decades of silence could be brushed off like a wrinkle in a napkin, she asked if she and Ruby could visit the house to see what Desmond left. I paused. Then answered, calmly, "No. It's not open for tours." The silence on her end was sharp. I didn't fill it. I let it breathe. I let her feel what I had felt all my life. 3 days later, I received a letter from Ruby's fiancé. He wanted to repair family ties before their wedding. Said it would mean a lot to Ruby if I attended. No mention of me. Just what it would mean to them. I mailed back a card. One sentence, handwritten: I wish you peace. But I won't be attending. No drama. No explanation. Just clarity. A new language I had learned, one where I didn't beg to be included. Desmond's royalties began to accumulate. Modest, but steady. Enough to fund the youth writing workshops I started in town. At the first session, a girl whispered, "I thought quiet kids didn't get picked." I knelt beside her and said, "They do. I see you." Patricia sent a photo of Ruby's bridal shower. Everyone dressed in white. Everyone smiling. I looked at it for 5 seconds, then deleted it. I didn't feel jealous. I didn't feel sad. I felt untouched. Like that world no longer owned me. The true justice wasn't in what I had gained. It was in what I no longer needed from them. Their praise. Their invitation. Their validation. I had walked away, not out of anger, but because I had finally built a place where I didn't have to shrink, and they would never get to say they gave me that. Because they didn't. The first time I invited people over to Desmond's house, it felt surreal. Not because it was fancy, it wasn't. But because every corner had space for me. My books, my music, my voice. Nothing curated to impress. Just a place to exist. Fully. I painted the guest room yellow, the same shade as the cardigan Desmond once gave me. I hung one of his postcards on the door. "You shine differently." It wasn't decoration. It was a reminder that someone once said those words. And meant them. At work, I stopped over-explaining myself. If I had an idea, I said it. If someone tried to take credit, I corrected them, without apology. Rachel noticed. "You've changed," she said. "No," I replied. "I just stopped disappearing." On what would have been Desmond's birthday, I hosted a community dinner at the house. Local writers, quiet teens, older neighbors, all with stories. We shared soup, poems, and silence that didn't feel awkward. It felt whole. Complete. I didn't tell Patricia. I didn't invite Ruby. Not out of spite, but because they had never made space for the real me. This was sacred ground. A place. Built not on performance, but presence. And they didn't know what to do with that kind of truth. Ruby sent a message months later. "Mom's been sick. She might want to see you." I stared at the text for a long time. I didn't respond right away. Not out of coldness. But because for once, I wasn't rushing to fix something I didn't break. Eventually, I replied, "I hope she finds peace." I didn't offer to visit. I didn't ask what kind of sick. I just gave them the same distance they had always given me. Wrapped in kindness, not cruelty. Sometimes, I walk the garden at sunset and whisper thank you. Not to Desmond, he already knew. But to the version of me that kept going, even when no one clapped. The girl who cried in guest rooms, yet still made space for her own joy, because the truth is, I wasn't asking for the spotlight. I just wanted to be seen. And now, I don't need their light. I have my own. Quiet. Steady. Unmistakably mine, and this time, I didn't have to fight for a seat at the table. I built the table.